Hi friends, it's Nugget here to introduce you to the first episode of the Siegel Panda Show, presented by Novell Global. Today we're talking to Jennifer Crupi, a metalsmith who has had some of her pieces shown all around the world. Come to think of it, did you hear about the journalist who became a sterling silver spoon salesman? He finally found the scoop he was looking for. Well, I hope you guys enjoy the interview. Bye!
We're going to start off with first, how did you end up getting started in metals and what made you choose metals?
Well, first, I want to thank you guys for having me. It's
Yes.
great to be able to do this and chat with you.
Yes, it was a great pleasure. And I was super happy when I was able to choose who we could do it. And I was like, oh my goodness, my professor is the best person to ask because she is one who taught me.
You're a little biased, so
far from.
But yes, thinking back to how I got started in metals was really kind of thanks to my sister. She was 4 years older than me, so she kind of blazed the trail in terms of going to art school because she studied graphic design. So she went to FIT in the city, and she started collecting art jewelry. Before that, I didn't really know about handmade jewelry. I, saw the commercial stuff you see in the mall, but you really didn't know about the actual craft of making something by hand or making one of a kind thing. So whether it was some pieces that she collected from fellow students, or she started going to galleries and started buying these really cool pieces of jewelry, I'm like, those are great. People make them. I remember having some pins that were just simple sort of piercings with little thread wound around them. And I was like, I want to cut out little shapes in metal. That looks really cool. And I was the son my father never had. So I always helped him with all the household, chores and tasks. And he had tons of tools and still has way too many tools, although I've inherited a lot of them.
It's okay. I cried when I got a toolbox, an actual toolbox for the first time 2 years ago. And I literally cried. And my mom's like, you're basically exactly what you said, the son that she never had. And she's like, I can never take you to Home Depot or Lowe's because you're literally a kid in a candy store. I'm like, sorry.
That's for sure. Yeah. So I grew up always helping dad with stuff. And so it was just okay, I want to try and make some of this. And I always did art stuff. I was always interested in art, was always making something, but not necessarily ever tried making jewelry. So I was like, okay, let's see what we have in the basement. And, dad had some copper and I just started pounding away at it. And he even had a saw. I'm like, oh, is there a way I could cut this out? But of course I laugh at how I used to saw, because I would put the metal in his vise and cut how you would cut as if you were sawing wood. I didn't know. Nobody told me how to make anything. I was in high school, just playing in the basement. So I just played around and I was like, this is really cool. I love the scale of it because I like detail in metals and jewelry making. I always like doing sculpture things, but I love the small scale and intimate nature of making tiny things. So once I started getting more into art and studied art the rest of high school, I knew I wanted to go to art school. And I'm like, I want to do jewelry and metals thing. I really love it. And the rest is history.
Okay. All right. So, wow.
Well, I guess maybe I didn't answer the metals, why metals in particular. Metals, I always I gravitated towards the texture, the look of it. I've always loved how it can be so adaptable. Metals could look shiny and hard, but it could also look really textured and soft and warm. It's so adaptable and it's so durable. I know I could never be a ceramics artist. Forget it. You drop it, it's over. Metals, I love that you can pretty much, unless you really melt it into a puddle, fix things. And I love that about it because I don't like to give up on anything. If I start something, I'm going to finish it. I'm going to try and get it to work one way or another.
Yeah, I did the ceramics and one of my pieces exploded. And then I had really successful pieces, but it's not forgiving. So, okay.
You also have to worry about dropping it, when it's on the little blowing pole. And it's when you watch Blown Away, it's just every time someone drops a piece, no matter how big it is, your heart just shatters for them because they have to start over. And then it's, it just keeps happening.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Sarah?
So I guess you already kind of answered this question before, but who or what inspired you into creating pieces out of metal and stuff like that?
Yes, well, I guess, yeah, that does sort of credit goes to my sister kicking that off. But once I got to school and I started studying metals, I had my first metals class with Lisa Gralnick, who was a fabulous metals teacher at Parsons. And, I was so inspired by her work and just, her enthusiasm for the media. And once she did that first demo on how to saw and rivet, I was like, I love this. So I was totally hooked.
Yeah.
What did you want to say something, Amanda?
Nope.
Did you have any fears starting with metal?
I mean, I don't think so, especially when I was just first starting off, going in the basement, just having fun. I always just loved making things. So there was really no pressure at that point. I guess the fear more set in once I started actually really studying it and taking classes in college. And it was more just, is what I'm making good enough kind of thing.
Yeah.
Not so much afraid to use the torch, although I always had tons of students who were afraid to touch that torch.
Oh, but I remember my first class, I was terrified and I wouldn't touch the torch unless you were right next to me. And you would just be like, nope, keep it on. Don't move the torch. Keep it on until the solder dissolves and disappears. I'm just like, no, I'm gonna burn it. I'm gonna burn it.
I know. I had a bunch of that just on Monday with my Monday classes. Like, no, it's not gonna melt. I don't know, it's not gonna melt. Or stand by me. Don't leave.
Yeah, for the longest time, I would be terrified to go in when you didn't have class hours and to finish my projects and whatnot. But then now I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm just gonna go there. I'm just gonna whip this thing out and then be done with it.
Yes. And of course, the more you do it, the more you get used to it. And then those fears go away.
Yep, exactly. When I know you made a whole bunch of pieces and you're in many different museums, including the Smithsonian and all, do you have a favorite piece by any chance?
Well, that's a tough one because it's kind of like choosing your favorite child, I mean, I do really love that piece that's in the Smithsonian, the ornamental hands figure one. I mean, there's something special about that piece and I kind of knew it. And of course I can only visit it there now, but I really love all my pieces for different reasons. I mean, some, because they have more of a personal connect, like the gesture kind of means something to me or reminds me of someone that I have that kind of connection to. There's little elements to them that I like, but it's hard to say a favorite because they all kind of, as I said, they're like my children and they're hard to part with.
Okay. Yeah, because I remember there was two pieces that you were talking about all the time. My favorite is always the finger tapper because I'm always constantly tapping my fingers on stuff and I play computer games, so I'm always constantly on the keyboard playing the PC video games, so it kind of reminds me of playing.
Yes, that's a fun one. And foot bouncer I always like too. That kind of goes along with that. And that's inspired by my husband because he would do it all the time. So that's another special piece for me.
I know many people that could benefit from that because they're always constantly tapping their knee, and the next thing you know, the table is just going shaking everywhere. I'm just like, stop.
We're in the conference room and we're having just a meeting. Sometimes Drew will come in and he'll be tapping his leg or something like that, and I feel the whole table shake. And I'm just like, what's going on? Are we having a mini earthquake or something here? It's just continuing.
Okay. Do you have a specific I can't even speak. Oh, it's been a long day. Do you have a specific metal you like to work in, or favorite metal?
Well, that's got to be sterling silver. I just love my silver. It's hard to stray away from it. I mean, I did sort of try something different and work for a number of years in aluminum because I wanted sort of a lighter weight material for some pieces that were a little bigger, and I wanted that sort of industrial aesthetic. But I sure missed my silver in that interim. There's just the color is appealing to me, and just, that bright white, I'm really drawn to that. And my mechanically aesthetic also sort of is tied to that. I mean, I've, made a few pieces here and there in gold, and gold is beautiful to work with. Like, there's special qualities about gold, but I still just love my silver.
Yeah, we mostly work in like the silvers, the 10 karat, 14, 18, platinum, palladium. But for me, I find working in silver, like, it's a very easy metal to work with, but it's also a very difficult metal to work with. Like, I find it so difficult sometimes soldering it, and I find the gold's easier to solder with. But I don't know if it's just something I'm doing wrong, or
well, no, I think gold acts differently because of the way it conducts, and it's easier to kind of solder something in a spot on gold and not worry about the rest of having to get the rest of it hot, or something on the other side falling apart. Silver's a little fussier that way because of the way it conducts. So that's normal.
okay.
Gold is a little riskier if you don't know what you're doing, because the melting temperature of the metal is so close to the solder, and you could totally put that gold into a puddle if you're not careful.
Yeah, I've done that when I first started too, by accident. I was annealing a ring and trying to make it softer, and then all of a sudden I was training somebody, and I was saying, make sure you always keep the torch moving, never stay in the same spot. And then they asked a question, and I looked up for 1 second, and then I melted the edge. I was like, well, that's exactly what you're not supposed to do. And they were like, oh. Luckily to say, they never did it. So, okay.
Well, you taught them well. That was a good lesson learned.
I learned from the best.
So, basically, what's kind of the opposite of what Amanda just asked you? What's the hardest metal you've ever worked with?
Well, as not a traditional precious metal, that time I worked in aluminum was annoying to me. Not solder it, and it forced me to always come up with a way to cold connect. And I love cold connections, rivets, tabs, you name it, threading things. I like the challenge of kind of coming up with a way to connect metal that isn't soldering, because sometimes it's just so, you got to do something together, solder it together. So I like that challenge of it, but it was frustrating to me both in its softness, and that I always had to come up with some kind of different way to do what I wanted to do, because I couldn't solder the metal together. In terms of precious metals, I didn't do much with platinum, but I did work with platinum a few times, and that's a challenge. And it's also because you have to be super clean, and don't mix things up with it, and it's a very different working sensibility than the other metals I found.
Is it hard to mix things up with platinum?
Well, I mean, mix things up like, you've got to be clean. You don't want gold filings on the platinum.
Okay.
You got to, here's my special file I'm only using for the platinum. That's kind of stressful. Unless you're really set up for it. I just, and I wasn't, I was just doing a couple rings and mostly doing finishing castings and some rivets and things. But yeah, it definitely was hard, like actually physically hard.
And it also sounds like it took a lot of your time, because you had to obviously make sure.
Yes, I was
gold didn't. Yeah, exactly. So you had to make sure, the little shavings didn't get on the platinum or anything like that. You couldn't be a mess.
Exactly. And I like to be a mess. So I had to tidy up for you here a little bit.
Now, I know when I was learning, I watched the jewelers a couple times. They actually had this one guy, he's been there for I don't even know how many years, but he was showing me how to clean the castings, and he would literally have 4 different files. So one file he dedicated for silver, the other files he dedicated for the golds, and the other ones were for the platinums. When you're cleaning the casting, does it make is the files a different grit, or is it just it wears down faster with certain metals, or how exactly, what's the reasoning behind that?
Behind splitting the files, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I think part of that is contamination. So you definitely don't want any filings on platinum, because if you get gold filings on platinum and then heated, it could eat away into the platinum, and that's a big nightmare. Gotcha. So cross-contamination of metals could be an issue for that, especially if he was working with platinum. But for cleaning castings in general, I mean, I use different cuts. So like the files I keep in terms of the fine cuts. So I'll use like a rougher cut to just kind of do the hard work, and then the finer cuts to really smooth things out. Or if I have like a solder chip and a hard to clean spot, I have my special nice tiny little escapement files with that fine cut that I don't use for other things, that I keep really nice so they're fresh, and I can really clean a hard to reach solder blob, because I do like doing things by hand. As much as I've got my flex shaft over there, I like, if I can do it with a file, I'll do it by hand, because I just feel like I get better control and can smooth it out better. And just, I like to be in control. I like things the old-fashioned way.
I mean, that's probably the easiest. And plus, there's also probably less of a risk of you like removing metals and whatnot. Because I know with the flex shaft, sometimes you can't really see too well if it's like with the disc, sometimes you'll take away too much, and then once you take it away, you can only build so much.
Exactly. I feel like it's much safer, and there's nothing worse than getting that like divot that you didn't want to get from some sort of, too fast rotating burr on the flex shaft that's just doing too much too quick. I like to just slow and steady and make sure I'm not doing too much.
Okay. All right.
Even though all my students just want to use the flex shaft constantly. They're like, can't we just use that and hurry up and get it done? I'm like,
guilty. I'm definitely guilty for that. I remember after learning casting and having to clean the castings, I definitely wanted to use the flex shafts, because the filing, it's after you're filing, and it's like, especially if you have to saw something, your arm's tired.
Okay. You got good muscles doing this.
Definitely. Is there a certain type of texture you like to put on the metal? I know if you taught us the steel wool, and literally every single sand grit possible, starting at 200, and it can end up in like 2000s.
Yes, well, I do like my smooth finishes. I mean, I appreciate a good texture, and I make all my students learn how to do the roller printing and chasing, and all different ways to texture the metal. But in terms of my own work, I just like it smooth, soft polished, because I feel like it goes with a more mechanical sort of aesthetic. And I'm in love with my 3M Triamite finishing papers. Where are they? These things I love. They're just they're so soft, and they're flexible. They're kind of fabricy. And I usually, there's like several grits of them. So I usually do my my regular old gray sandpaper up to 400-600, and then I switch to those and do them up to, I don't know what to go, 800 or 1,000-ish. So yeah, I do lots of grit. I do like 10 pieces of sandpaper. You can say I am not a production jeweler. I just make my one-of-a-kind pieces that take me forever.
Okay.
Around how many pieces have you made, and like how many are in your collection?
Well, I mean, that's kind of, I never did a full count, but I've been working in my body of work about gestures and body language for probably over 20 years now.
Wow.
So it's the same sort of theme, but I do tend to work in series. So like I'll do a series that has anywhere from like 3 to 6 pieces in it. So that's generally like, I try not to do like a one-off, or if I do a one-off, it means it was going to be a series and then it just never materialized. But generally I see things in little small groupings. So even though they're all together with the big broader concept of the body language and gestures, I kind of narrow down into smaller focused series that are, 3 to 6 pieces, I'd say. There are several of those over the years.
Yeah, I don't think that's too bad. If it's like over the years, it's just like, it's kind of like, I don't really know what to compare it to be honest with you. Like now that I think about it, I don't really know what to compare that to. I was going to say TV shows, but they have like 20.
You can't rush an artist,
No, I get it. I get it. I have a full sleeve. I can't rush my artist anytime that I need to.
Yeah, if you ended up rushing one of your tattoo artists, you're gonna end up with a stick figure on your arm.
Not even just a stick figure. It might be an infection too. and I can't afford the trip to the ER.
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody can, to be honest. So I know when I was back in school, you always had all these stories that you would tell people that motivated them in schools, basically, of when you would give us projects and we would look at you like you're crazy because we're just like, how can we do this? Because especially the riveting, that was the very first project, and then you say we're gonna combine these metals like a sandwich and basically just stick them together, but we're not using anything. Do you have like any other stories that like inspire your new students, I guess to say?
You mean to sort of like keep them going to learn?
Exactly, yes, and not scare them too much.
Well, I always show them the work of the previous students. So whenever they're kind of like, intimidated by a project, or I show them, okay, our very first project, we're going to learn how to saw and pierce and texture and rivet. And then, they see the demos and they maybe feel a little overwhelmed. And I always show them, okay, now this is work that students made sitting in those exact seats who had no experience, and look at these beautiful things they ended up making. So I think I'm always using the students' own work to show them that they can do it. Because they'll be like, no, was that made in this class? I'm like, yes, this was made. Trust me, I'm not lying here. These or the stuff that I have usually in the display case outside. So I think it's the work of, their own fellow classmates or people who have taken the class before them that they see, and they realize like, wow, this person really didn't know how to do any of this, and they figured it out. And, I'd like to be encouraging. I feel like I got to be a cheerleader. So when people get frustrated or want to throw their piece out the window, I've got to talk them off the ledge. So there's a part of being a psychologist to this whole thing too. You got to be a cheerleader and a motivator, and
yeah, I remember
people look on the bright side.
Yeah, I remember you trying to talk me out of a couple pieces, and I don't remember if I took your advice and not do it, or I just kind of went through it and cried my whole way. But yeah, I remember seeing some of those pieces. I was just like, that's insane, no way can this happen. Because originally, before I went to school, I originally wanted to be a painter. So right before I took your classes, my heart was dedicated on, I'm going to go for painting and I'm going to do this. And then I took a metals class. I was just like, yep, nope, I'm going to do metals.
That's what I love. I love it when I can steal away from other areas.
Yeah, it was definitely one of by far the best decisions, because I have this theory, or I don't know what it is, to be honest, but I have this thing where I tell myself the messier my hands are when I'm working on like art pieces, the better job I feel like I'm doing. So if I go home from work and my hands are like, I can still like see, like I could just see my hands in general, I feel like I didn't do a good job. But when my hands are like super dirty and right before I leave to go to work, I have to wash them and I actually see like the dirt coming off, I'm just like, yep, today was a good day.
Yes, there's nothing more satisfying than getting a lot of metal dust on your hand. I've never been afraid of a little dirt and metal grime.
Oh yeah, no, I've come home and I would accidentally like have some on my cheek with me not even knowing, and then someone would tell me, be like, what is that on your face? I'm like, what's on my face? What is there? And I'd be terrified. They're like, it's just dirt, but how did you get that? I was like, oh. I don't know of any other questions. If you had to give any tips for anybody who's just starting out, so if they're not in school but they want to get their hands onto working in metals, do you have any tips, or even just them trying to create something on their own? Do you have any tips as to how they can motivate themselves, or just any little pointers?
I managed to start off with just the stuff I found in the basement. So you really don't need, sure, it's great to have a lot of tools and equipment, but sometimes I feel like you're forced to be more creative when you don't. And I think we found that out a little bit in the pandemic when we were in lockdown and my students had to pretty much make stuff out of whatever they can find.
Oh,
And,
wow.
so we all had to get creative, we were doing a casting project and, we had to kind of find alternate ways to sort of, at least understand the idea of casting or, we had to do found object projects. I had students, well, do a theme, you pick a room and you're going to find stuff in that room that you are going to make something out of, like make a series of jewelry pieces out of found objects. So stuff from the recycling bin, stuff from the kitchen, so in a way, sometimes it forces you to be a little bit more creative because you might be restricted in not having full access to a studio. But you could do simple things, even just in wire. Hammering wire was sort of where I started. Punching holes in metal and then finding ways to kind of cut sheet with shears and wire and do textural things. So I think you have to kind of, start with what you have, but use your creativity and definitely, the more you can sort of learn and practice, the better you're going to get. And the more techniques you can learn, even better. But don't be dissuaded by not having, metals is one of those things where you could be like, oh, how do I even begin? Because it's just, there's so much stuff. It's technical. But you can start off simple and, even just with a spool of wire and some pliers,
Yeah, I know when I was home, during the pandemic, because we couldn't work, I was literally like my hands, I have to keep my hands doing something and creating something. So I had 2 very teeny tiny pairs of pliers and I was just there working with chain links. So I was literally starting to make chain mails and like little pendants and anything that I could make. And everybody kept asking me, oh, so what do you do when you get home? I bet you have like all these tools. And I was like, to be honest with you, I have no tools. I just have 2 pairs of pliers and some jump rings. So I'm just making anything.
Yeah, that's what I said. It doesn't really take all that much. It just takes a little patience and creativity.
Yep, definitely. And with me, Band-Aids.
Oh no, still, I think you outgrew that. No.
No, I still have the Band-Aid box that I made, and I show everybody because they're always like, oh, what are some of the pieces that you made? And the very first piece that I show them is the bouquet that I made with the metal flowers. And then I say, and when I was making this, I also had my Band-Aid box that I made, and I swivel it open with the Band-Aids. They're like, yep, that's you. I'm like, yeah.
I'm glad you got a lot of use out of that box.
Oh my goodness, that box was one of the best things I've ever made. So,
do you actually have any pieces with you that you'd want to show us?
Yeah, I've got ornamental hands figure 4 here. Let's get this guy on.
Okay.
So this is one of the ornamental hands series pieces. And I actually just finished doing sort of a prop version of this along with the ornamental hands figure 1, which is sort of that gesture for a Paris opera.
Oh, wow.
Venturing into making opera props, which was kind of a cool thing, except then the opera is like on pause because it was supposed to open in January. So we're hoping it's still going to be on in the fall. But it was kind of cool trying to rethink these into pieces that were more sort of sturdy, that could get kind of beat up after multiple performances and know that they would sort of hold up, because I certainly didn't want to lend them my real one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
looks so cool. I want to put my hand in it.
So these kind of just little modeling chains.
Oh, wow.
Little finger.
So do you have to size that to your hand specifically?
Yes, I am my most available model. So most of my pieces are all custom fit to me, which unfortunately means I have to model them, but there's always Photoshop.
Yeah. If you need someone for that, I'm here.
Yeah, Sarah's our photographer that helps take pictures of all our rings and everything. So she basically knows what every single ring looks like. She might not know like the name. I don't even know how many rings we even have.
It's way too many. But the thing is, when someone will say like a number to me, like one of the style numbers, I'll automatically know which one they're talking about. Or like when I see them on our website or anything like that, I just know that I remember taking that picture. And then that's really it. The one that's most common that I think everyone work knows is 16648. I think that's the one that everyone knows because of how popular it is.
That's the magic number then, eh?
Yep, 16648. You could do different versions of 16648. You could do the two-tone, you could do diamonds. With a lot of our rings, you can't really, we custom shop, so we can add the diamonds in. We could do whatever, someone wants, but it'll always upcharge because we have to fix the model. We have to fix, we have to add on for two-toning. We have to add on for the diamonds, but 16648 already has it. And you can even combine the diamonds and the two-tone in one, which a lot of rings we don't do that for. So it's just like one of our most popular rings because it's simple, but you could change it with a set price there, if that makes any sense.
I think it makes sense.
I sounded really smart there, and I'm proud of myself for that.
You're doing good. So another thing that our podcast is trying to branch out on, we both have so many animals. I have a dog and a cat, and Sarah has
I have a zoo.
A bunch.
I have 2 ferrets, I have 2 chinchillas, 2 lizards, a leopard gecko, and a crested gecko. Conway, up.
Oh, and we just recently adopted a office dog named Conway.
Let me see if I can get him.
He's the cutest little thing ever.
Oh my goodness.
Look at him.
Adorable.
I also have 4 hamsters, 3 cats, and another dog upstairs.
And we were wondering, I know before you told me stories about your hedgehog. I don't know if you still have your hedgehog or if you have any other animals.
Well, I'm afraid little Fig the hedgehog has passed on, but
I'm sorry.
She was a cutie though. I do have 2 cats, and you're very lucky that my little young cat, who just turned about 1 year, is in the house. My studio is detached from the house, so it's a safe zone, because yesterday, usually my husband's been working at home too. So if I have a meeting, he takes care of the cat, or if the cat starts crying, I just text him. I have my automatic SOS text ready to go. And he's got to come run down, get the cat, and lock him in the room with him. Well, he was getting his second vaccination shot yesterday, and I was alone, and I had this meeting there. I didn't think I had to talk that much, but apparently I did, and I had to present to this group of people I've never met before. That cat cried for 27 minutes. I saw it. My meeting started at 2. He didn't stop crying till 2:27, and it was so embarrassing. I was so Finley is nowhere near our little podcast thing tonight, but he is very adorable and is a troublemaker.
That's exactly what's happened to me right now. My Penny's right here, and she's a little orange tabby. I rescued her, and she's literally constantly just meowing at me right now, and she dropped her ball and her other toy by my foot, so she's like, come play with me, and she jumps up, and I'm not sure if you saw, but she's even tried to get the mic to get my attention. So if you see a little white mitten, you already know it's her.
Yes, yeah, that's what little Finley does. It's like he's this little spoiled boy, and when he is not the center of attention, and especially when he hears me talking, it just makes it, the louder I talk, the more he wants to cry over me. But he'll jump on my legs and attack my legs and bite me, and then I still have to keep a straight face and keep talking. Well, my cat is attacking my leg.
That's exactly what happened to me when you were talking about answering one of the questions. Penn was literally doing all that, and I'm just here. I'm like, just keep a straight face. It's okay. Don't acknowledge her. And then, yeah, she didn't stop until I started putting my hand down and at least scratching her and giving her some attention. She's a very jealous cat.
That's how Shadow is, one of my chinchillas. Ben and I were just down here watching TV, and out of nowhere, he just starts screaming. They scream because they want attention or they're in distress or whatever. But he's literally the most healthiest chinchilla ever, so he just sits there and starts screaming, but when we present ourselves to him and we say hello, we're here, he'll just do it again. So I'm kind of shocked he hasn't done it yet, or he might start. So
don't
if you hear that, it sounds kind of like a horn. It sounds like those, what are those scooters in Italy, those a moped. A moped. It sounds like a moped horn.
Wow.
That's what it sounds like.
I don't think I've ever heard the sound of a chinchilla before. Interesting.
Yes, me neither.
No.
It was great chatting with you guys. I'm
It
so
was
Yes.
great chatting with you too. It was nice to meet you.
nice meeting you.
And it was great seeing you again. I'm planning on visiting like at least sometime this month. So I still have my owl in the display case.
Yes.
I completely forgot about that. So
Someday we'll get it back to you.
someday, I remember I was gonna pick. I messaged you. It had to been last year. I was going to arrive that week, and then I asked you if you were there, and you were like, "Oh no, we're on spring break," and then we never opened back up. I was just like, no.
Yes, it's been a challenging year for sure.
It definitely has been. But thank you so much for everything that you've
Thank
done.
you.
My pleasure. My favorite student.
Aw, stop. You're gonna make me blush. Up there.
Well, you know, you're always my example. I bring up when I do my open house slideshows. I've got your picture and your quote, and I always have to tell our successful alumni stories. So
Yeah, if you ever need me to go back there, by all means, you have my email, and now you have my work email too. So I'm
I
always
can
checking
harass you
those.
all the time.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay, well, it was. Thank you so much, and
No problem.
enjoy the rest
Thank
of your
you.
night.
First, you use a chasing tool to hammer texture into the metal band. Lift a few times, and yes, I did hit my finger. Then you file the one end of the metal to make it straight. You put flux on it to keep the metal clean when you anneal the metal. You then quench it and dip it into water to cool it. Hammer the metal flat again, and then cut out the size that you want. Size 5. Wink, wink. After that, you then file the other end of the ring to make it flat. Here's where I struggled. I tried bending it with my own fingers, and then I came with a brilliant idea of using pliers. Still struggled, had to use a hammer. Then you put flux on, and you put a little solder chip just to melt the solder chip together to make the ring round. Then you hammer the ring round. You solder on the head that holds the stone, opposite of where you would solder together the ring. You then take a steel brush and brush away all the dirt, and then you have a final piece. Yay! Those prongs make me want to hide it in a corner.